In the second season of Interview with the Vampire, it pretty much finishes, at least what I remember, of the first book of the Vampire Chronicles, and it may push both people who read the book and people who didn't read the book to tears. Pretty much to summarize it, Season 2, or Part 2, of Interview with the Vampire completes the book storyline as Claudia and Louis relocate to Paris, get involved with the local vampire coven, and we dive a bit into Armand's past, not only in terms of his past with Louis, but also with Lestat, and how he came to be the leader of the coven, the troop of the vampires, and how everything went to hell as Louis decided to be individual, and Claudia's past led to the trial that, hopefully I don't end up crying for this because I'm still emotional 2 to 3 weeks later. But starting off with the highlights. Delaney Hales, assuming that's how you say her name, as Claudia, was an unexpected highlight. And I say that because, like most people, I'm not very fond of when a character gets recasted. Bailey Bass was the perfect Claudia in season 1 and was able to make the character her own. And there wasn't even much of a reason toward the end to compare her to Kirsten Dunst by the time the season was over. So to have another Claudia introduced, it seemed like it would have been a very notable uphill challenge when it came to Hales taking on this role. However, in many ways it wasn't. In some ways, even though Claudia is immortal and can't grow up, there's a shift from Bass to Hales that kind of gives you late teen, early adulthood to full-grown woman. And with that, it almost feels like instead of it being a recast, but instead it's like passing a baton. Hales is able to do what perhaps Bass, as someone who's 18, 19, maybe wasn't ready to do, or maybe based off of whatever training she has. I don't know her history, but there's something about the way that Hales plays her. And maybe it's because I think Hales has a theater background where you kind of get the theatrics of this forever child vampire who's a grown woman in her mind. And I think the best way to kind of compare it would be when it comes to House of a Dragon, Millie Alcock passing the torch to Emma Darcy to complete Rhaenyra's story. And I think that's the best way I can put it without going into all the details. I'm not going to say this review is going to be spoiler-free, but certain things I'm probably going to dance around. Leading to the next highlight, and that's Daniel's effect on Louis and Armand's relationship. And the reason why we're highlighting Daniel and not Louis and Armand's relationship is because Louis and Armand's relationship honestly is an unoffensive, not a low point topic. But what Daniel does, which leads to a lot of friction between them, it leads to a lot of fun moments. And even when they're going into Daniel's past, when he's talking with Louis back, I believe, in the 70s, seeing his back and forth with Louis, how that affects his relationship with Armand that's existed seemingly out of spite or that does out of love, it does something so that the present doesn't feel like such a terrible thing to keep bouncing back to. Instead, it has its own little silver lining amongst all the nonsense that happens that, for some, like me, who don't really see the chemistry that often between Armand and Louis, Daniel was the person who kept it from being something you want to just drag your nails across your cheeks about. Which leads to the last highlight. The last highlight is Roxanne Duran, who plays a character named Madeline. And generally speaking, I feel like we don't highlight too often reoccurring characters or characters who are, I guess, guest stars. But when it came to Roxanne Duran as Madeline, I feel like her character was crafted in such a way where it's kind of like how things were in the 90s or 80s, where if you was a guest star, had like a special reoccurring role on a television show, it's not just to fill in a spot, like be a elevated background actor, but instead it's because they're trying to build up something when it comes to you. And when it comes to Roxanne Duran as Madeline, what they do with Madeline is make her seem like a type of survivor. She's someone who slept with a German officer during World War II in order to stay fed and protected in some ways. And then when it comes to a relationship with Claudia, because of her decisions during World War II, she's harassed, almost gets assaulted, and here comes Claudia, who can become some type of protector. So when it comes to the trial, I believe in episode 7, where Claudia's fate's potentially sealed, you think that she's going to betray Claudia, but instead she creates what becomes part of a series of emotional moments, especially for Claudia, and probably you too, that really seals the deal on Duran deserving some type of highlight and not just being one of the many characters who did what they were expected to do, like Ben Daniels as Santiago, but don't get like a full-on let's talk about what they did type of situation. Moving on. Episode 5, I feel when you consider what happens in episode 7, episode 8, when Lestat reappears, it kind of sucks that episode 5, which goes into what happened in San Francisco, I believe, in the 70s, they reveal that Lestat's still alive, so it kind of undercuts the reveal in episode 7 back in the 40s, I assume, that Lestat's going to show up. Because you already know he's alive 2 episodes ago, so him showing up after Louis and Claudia tried to kill him, you know, it just doesn't have the pop that I think should have been there, but what you're gonna do, it's been film edited and it's official. Which leaves one last topic, and that's just, at times you're gonna grow tired of Louis. And I don't mean this as like a jab at Jacob Anderson for portraying him and what he tries to do, but again, when it comes to Louis, he sometimes feels like a Trojan horse, or however you want to put it, toward an interesting character. Louis and Claudia, it's always Claudia who really shines in those scenes. It's not Louis. Louis and Lestat, it's Lestat. Lestat is what the whole Vampire Chronicles, for the most part, is built off of. So when it comes to Louis, on his own, when he's just with Armand, who's not that interesting of a character, I mean, his storyline's interesting, but I feel like the way he's portrayed is a little bit too whiny, but I don't know. Just something about Louis just makes it so, I don't know if this series is going to stick to the books or it's going to get creative with it, but I do definitely hope with the way this season ends, hopefully Louis starts to diminish in screen time as time goes on, and it just focuses on Lestat and giving us the character who is the reason why this whole franchise even exists. And overall, while Louis has definitely won out his welcome over the course of 2 seasons, with playing a smaller role in the later books, one can only hope this series' reigns get rightfully handed over to Lestat and Louis' role is diminished to, at best, a recurring character, because clearly there's a lot of good writing and a lot of good performances that can come from this show. It's just learning how to hone in on the people and the characters who make the show great and not the ones that the show is beholden to because of the books. That's going to be the balancing act that's going to be needed going forward.